This is patently outrageous.
This is an act of war committed against our country, and I think the judge blew it here.
I gotta tell you, it sounds like a lot of legal mumbo-jumbo.
Smirconish.
Michael Smirconish.
Smirconish.
That's not emotional, that's a fact, ma'am. That's a fact. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. I'm Michael Smirconish. Since 1927, Time magazine has been recognizing one individual as the Person of the Year. Their choice for 2001, New York City Mayor Rudolph Giuliani. No doubt it's a patriotic pick, but was Rudy the right call? After all, Time's own criteria state that they're looking for the individual who, for better or for worse, has had the greatest impact on the news. Some say that it should have been Osama bin Laden for that reason, and in a moment we'll meet one individual who thinks that Time magazine has sold out. Then we'll offer 15 minutes of fame to three of our viewers and hear what they have to say about the issue. Buzz Bissinger is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. He's formerly with the Philadelphia Inquirer. He's authored 2 books, and he now writes for Vanity Fair magazine. Buzz, welcome to the program.
Michael, good morning.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Well, I have the issue in front of me.
I see that.
You see Rudy Giuliani on the cover with the caption,
Rudy.
Tower
Right.
of Strength. He's the
Right.
Time Man of the Year.
Right.
What's your take?
Complete, total media cop-out. Totally, by their own criteria. The man who made the most impact, for better or worse. There is no choice except Osama bin Laden. They refused to put him on the cover because they were afraid of being accused of unpatriotic, which is not what a media institution should do. Complete cop-out.
But in the past, Time magazine has shown a willingness to name Adolf Hitler as a Person of the Year. They've also said that the Ayatollah of the hostage situation.
Exactly. So they're going to pick Adolf Hitler. Hey, look, it isn't that Osama bin Laden is a good human being. He's a despicable human being. But name me someone who had more impact, not just on American society, but the entire world. There is no choice. This man has been a human being from September 11th on. So it's really man of the past 2.5 months.
But the same point could be made of Osama bin Laden. You could say that he was the man of one day, if that were the criteria, because September 11 was one day.
He was the man of one day for repercussions that will exist through the ages. Trust me on this. Time magazine, I don't know if I can say it on the air, they had no balls.
Well,
they sat around their table saying, if we do this, are we going to lose readers? They were worried about circulation and not being patriotic.
Buzz Bissinger, here's the explanation from Time as to why it was not Osama bin Laden. Managing editor Jim Kelly said of bin Laden, he is too small a man to get credit for all that has happened in America in the autumn of 2001.
Right.
It was what came after his men had finished their job that has come to define this year. Don't the folks at Time have a point when they say that the reaction of Americans, the fervor, the patriotism, the response in the aftermath of 9/11 almost overshadows that which occurred on that particular day?
Come on, Michael, absolutely not. I mean, you know, now I'm going to be sort of cast in the role of being a jerk about this. Osama bin Laden and his associates brought down the World Trade Center. They brought down the single greatest icon of American society. They killed 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000 people. They put America on its knees. It has repercussions in insurance, financial, construction, fire, police, compared to this guy who has done nothing for the city except prove to be a human being. Before September 11th, Rudy Giuliani was reviled in New York.
All right, your belief then is that it all comes down to circulation and patriotism.
Yes.
Does Time have an obligation to its ownership to not cut off its nose to spite its face, to not cut its own throat, because to put bin Laden on this cover perhaps would have wreaked havoc on circulation and revenue? Aren't those fair factors for the magazine to take into account?
No, because, you know, and this is why people hate the media, because, and I am a journalist, we use the First Amendment when it's convenient, when we want to print something, but then we hide behind it when we don't want to make the hard choice. This is Time's criteria. The man who has impacted society for better or for worse. Change the criteria.
Let me tell you what Time magazine has said about Rudy Giuliani as to why he was the individual that they think had the greatest impact on the news. Rudy Giuliani, quote, for having more faith in us than we had in ourselves. A sappy defense of their selection, or is there some candor?
Complete bad patriotic BS. I don't even know what that means. It's part of, it's part of, if we wave the flag and say enough good things about America, good things will happen.
Well, I think it's obvious he was selected because of the way in which he's been able to hold the city together in the face of evil and destruction, the likes of which we've never had.
Osama bin Laden is the most evil son of a bitch that ever walked the face of the planet. But he has affected the world and American life in a way that no one ever has,
and
including Hitler.
And you're not willing to say the same about Rudy Giuliani, that his response in holding the city together was of equal, if not greater proportion.
Because he has not held the city together. He has not held the city together, and you will see it all coming out as a new mayor takes over, and he lifts the covers, and he sees a city that is reeling financially. If held the city together, look at his attitude about race. Before September 11th, this man was reviled as being divisive, as hating blacks.
Final question for Buzz Bissinger.
Yes.
How important?
You got me really pissed off.
How important is all of this? The selection of the man of the year, time, Osama bin Laden, Rudy Giuliani. Does it all matter in the scheme of things?
It marries to Rudy Giuliani when he wants to replace the Pope. Obviously, it's of no importance to time because it's a completely political, self-motivated move. If they made the right choice, then time could at least hold its head high. This is BS.
Buzz Bissinger, thank you for joining us. You've heard what the man with the press credentials has to say about the Time magazine controversy. When we return, we'll offer 15 minutes of fame to 3 of our viewers and hear what they have to say about the same subject. Welcome back. We're talking about Time magazine's selection of New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani as the 2001 Person of the Year. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Buzz Bissinger thinks that Time sold out and that the obvious selection was Osama bin Laden because of the criteria used by Time magazine to make the selection. Well, now we'll offer 15 minutes of fame to 3 of our viewers and hear what they have to say about the subject. Lee Jackson joins us. Lee is the proud mother of 2 boys, and she's got some decided opinions on the subject. Harriet LESSEY is a public relations executive, and she too is ready to rumble on this issue. And finally, Joe Vento is the proprietor of a restaurant located in South Philadelphia. Joe's never at a loss for words. In fact, let's start with you, Joe Vento. You listen to Buzz Bissinger. He's got all the fancy credentials. What's your take as to who should have been the Time Man of the Year, Rudy Giuliani or Osama bin Laden?
Well, definitely Rudy Giuliani. Now, I understand that Time magazine, they don't care what criteria, what they do, whether they kill people or what. They just want what the greatest events. Well, that piece of shit, bin Laden, you want to kill 6,000 people, and God knows how many other people involved with the families, which is in the thousands. You want to, is that kind of a tragedy, and you want to put him on the cover of a magazine?
But Joe, arguably, he had the greatest impact on the news, and that's the Time criteria.
All right, well, then they're going to have to change that format. And let's put it down to people that do something good, like Mayor Giuliani.
You're comfortable with the Giuliani selection?
Definitely. There's a man's man. He stood up and was counted and was there when he was needed.
All right,
he put his troops together.
By those criteria, Lee Jackson, I suspect that Joe would not have been for the selection of Hitler in '38 or the Ayatollah Khomeini in 1979.
Definitely.
How do you see this situation?
Well, you know, I think that that Rudolph Giuliani was a safe choice. It's sort of like choosing, you know, the cheese pizza instead of the calamari. I think that he should have. I think that Rudolph Giuliani was the reactor. And he did it gloriously, he did it bravely, he did it with great dignity, but he reacted to a situation that Osama bin Laden created.
But if there had been no calamari pizza in this case, if there had been no bin Laden to begin with, Rudy would have played no role. I mean, doesn't that point back to Osama as being the appropriate choice?
Well, I think, you know, it's, as that character in Harry Potter says, Albus Dumbledore, you know, he says, Voldemort did great things, he did terrible things, but he did great things. And I think that that's true for Osama bin Laden. Now, you know, you also have to say to yourself, if you're not going to choose Rudy Giuliani and you can't choose Osama bin Laden, who will you choose? And that to me is the real question. I mean, who really are the alternatives?
Harriet, you heard Buzz Bissinger. You're
Yes.
in the public relations business. Buzz's argument is they took a powder here because they didn't want to lose circulation. They didn't want to lose advertising dollars. Could that have been the motivating decision to go with Rudy?
Had to be something like that, Michael. I don't know otherwise what it would have been. I think what did happen is that the world was surprised by this mayor who was basically having his last hurrah, with a lot of cheers around it. Suddenly he stepped up. This was Rudy's moment, but unfortunately it wasn't Rudy who deserved this particular cover, because in fact he did nothing other than act like a mayor, and a hell of a good mayor, and a decent guy. And I have to agree with Leigh when she said that it wouldn't have been, or you, maybe even you said that it wouldn't have been a bin Laden, there wouldn't have been a Rudy without a bin Laden. And while I might find him a horrific person, and the acts that happened on September 11th, a horrible thing, I think that Time Magazine really copped out.
Joe, to the women, your response is what? You've heard their defense now of the bin Laden choice, which didn't happen. You believe they made the right call with Rudy.
I still choice that the magazine itself should change its criteria and should do the people that do the most good in the world should be on this
But
cover.
that wasn't the criteria.
I understand that. I just can't see glorifying a murderer. That's just what he is. And putting his face on that picture is disgusting over it. He should never be on this magazine.
Michael,
I don't go for none of the stuff they go. No, it's the media. Even in Afghanistan, they got the kids over cheering against her. That should not be seen.
I agree with that. Oh, you said it shouldn't be seen at all?
It shouldn't be seen at all, no.
But it exists. I mean, people dislike America. People are unhappy with America. Evil exists. I mean, you have to acknowledge it. I'm not saying you have to glorify it, but I am saying
that's what
you
we're
do.
doing when we're putting it on the paper.
No, you're
We're
saying it
glorifying it.
exists.
I think what Joe is saying is, and you're the mom of those two boys, do you want them going to the newsstand or opening up your mailbox and seeing Osama bin Laden, Man of the Year? Who knows if they're going to read the story? What kind of a message does that send to young people? That he somehow has been rewarded is, I think, how they'd interpret the decision.
Well, I mean, the same newsstand has Gwyneth Paltrow's breasts. I mean, you just have to kind of, these things exist.
The breasts are Gwyneth Paltrow. I'm not sure.
They're going to show some gleam and
Right.
a little happiness there.
I mean,
the destruction.
No, I mean, my point is that I'm okay with my son seeing Osama bin Laden there. I'm not okay with my son seeing Osama bin Laden as a hero, because he's not a hero. He's a force of evil. But I think we have to acknowledge that that force of evil exists, and we have to handle it in some way.
Harriet, in 1942, in the war years, there's a lot of discussion over the fact that Adolf Hitler was once a Time Man of the Year, but having done some research, I can tell you that he was the 1938 Time Man of the Year. World War II broke out September 1, 1939, and for the next 7 years, Allied leaders like Winston Churchill or FDR or Ike were rewarded, if that's the appropriate choice of words, with the Man of the Year distinction. So there's some precedent here for Time Magazine saying, hey, we're not about to make a public relations blunder by putting Adolf Hitler on the cover during World War II or putting bin Laden on the cover in the year 2001.
I do want to say that I think you have a future with Time Magazine for being politically incorrect.
I'm just trying to understand the decision.
Person of the year, not the man of the year. That's number one. Number two, I personally vile, obviously, Hitler, and I feel the same way about bin Laden. But the criteria is not what Joe wants it to be. The criteria is what Time Magazine, who owns the page and the cover, says it is. And they totally blew away their own, it's like advertising cigarettes, direct mail, and you send them, there's little chalky things that we did as a kid, fakes. It's not, this is what it is. They changed the rules in the middle of the game.
Doesn't she have a point when she says to you, Joe, your comment was, well, Time Magazine ought to change the criteria. That seems like an admission that they gave it to a guy who was undeserving of the criteria that they established.
No, because I understand that. You asked me for my opinion. And my opinion is I don't glorify any kind of horrendous crimes that these kind of people. I don't want to see them on magazines. I don't want the media talking about these people. For instance, we're going to go after his head and we're telling people how we're going to plan to. Shut your mouth. It has nobody's
what's the
business.
news going to look like night after night if you're only going to tell us good stories?
Well, that's what life should be about. All good things here. Look what's happening in this world out here. Look who we're glorifying. We're looking up to all the evils. They're all of a sudden.
would
Look
you
at
ever
me.
have-
Yeah, here's a big celebrity guy. Here's
Would
a
you
guy.
ever have shown the film footage of the two towers coming down or the airplanes hitting the first tower? It sounds to me like you would have sanitized that right out of the
that
airwaves.
there you show to show what these people are like. But now I'm not going to put them on the people on the page and watch their soldiers cheering when we did such a great deed over there, because it wasn't a great deed. It was a disastrous
Lee,
thing to our lives.
when Time magazine put the Ayatollah Khomeini on the cover, they received more letters about that issue than any prior issue that they'd had. They no doubt were concerned that they would have received even more response, email in this day and age, if they had put Osama bin Laden on the cover. From a business standpoint, you have to understand the decision that they made.
Absolutely, those irradiation machines would have been expensive. I mean, clearly that would have been a very controversial choice. And I guess I fault the Time magazine because I'm not sure if they were imaginative enough. It seems to me that Time magazine's choices at their best show avenues of influence and effectiveness that that people might not ordinarily
what was
think about.
overlooked? If not Giuliani, then who should it have been?
Wait,
And if
no,
not
that's
bin
what
Laden?
what they
That's my
overlooked
question.
was much of Giuliani. They took 6 months, 5 months out of Giuliani's history, and they sort of forgot that one guy was shot by Giuliani's police force with 44 bullets, and the cops got off.
No,
And
three. There were three. There was Diallo, there was Luima, and the security guard, Dorismond. I mean, there were great scandals.
How
that were
valid
going on.
is this alleged police brutality, Joe Vento, if you're just trying to decide who should be the man of the year? In the aftermath of 9/11, does anything else matter?
I don't care about that other stuff. There has not the issue involved here. Okay, we're talking about bin Laden and we're talking about Mayor Giuliani. Okay, I don't care about his divorce. That's all. Everybody, it's like ice cream. Everybody's doing it once or another here, divorce. What's the
Let's
big
hope
deal
Mrs.
about
Vento's
that?
not watching the show tonight.
But no, seriously, I just don't glorify anything like that. That's my belief now.
Lee, who did you have in
just
mind?
don't.
Is there somebody else out there? And I should point out, by the way, it
We
doesn't
don't
have to
have
be a
choices,
person. It can also be an event. Anthrax, by way of example, could have been the event of the year or the scare about anthrax. Is there somebody we're overlooking when limiting this to just bin Laden and Giuliani?
I mean, I think you could argue for George Harrison. You could argue for
George Harrison instead of Giuliani or bin
You
Laden?
could argue now wait. You could argue for George Harrison. You could argue for Leopold Senghor. You could argue for the people who were involved with the stem cell research. I think the people involved in the stem cell research are ultimately going to have the largest impact on our society.
Harriet, did we leave anybody off the table that you can think of?
First of all, who we left off the table is probably not nearly as important as who the other choices were. It wasn't just those two people who were under consideration at time. I believe there were other people.
George W. Bush happened to be one of them, and I think that Bush
definitely.
arguably...
All right, if given a choice, I go for Julie. But the other thing that I think is that there were real heroes here. There were real heroes. There were people who were there day in and day out.
Firemen.
There were firemen. There were police squads. There's the emergency people. There are the people who opened up their doors to these people. Rudy had a relatively, I'm not saying it was easy for him. I'm sure he'll have post-traumatic stress for the rest of his life. He needed to be there, and it gave him a chance to leave office like a hero.
But wait a minute, are you suggesting that if there's an embodiment of that heroism, that would have been an appropriate selection? Because I think that's what Time did. They couldn't identify all of these people who responded with heroics, so instead they selected the one man, the one individual who embodied that feeling of response and heroism in the country. I think you're actually supporting this choice.
But they could have chosen an icon. They've done that before.
I think that you didn't hear what I said.
Well, you were talking about patriotism, and they went with the real
you asked me
patriot.
other options. I didn't necessarily say that those were 100%. In other words, what I'm saying, there were many options. It seems to me I have visions of Time magazine. They could have done a collage of this. They could have done. How about the man?
But you would have said they sold out.
I would not have said they sold out.
They've also chosen as the person of the year a number of years ago. They chose women. I mean, they chose an iconic woman, saying that this group of people had the hugest impact on society for that year. They could have chosen the New York firefighter. I mean, it didn't have to be a specific
Without
person.
a specific identity.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
And they have done that in the past. They could have chosen the man who, there were two men who carried a woman down 86 floors who was in a wheelchair.
Joe, I think they're both changing their views at this stage. Right. They started out by saying it had to be bin Laden. Now
Like
I
you
see
said,
them embracing
like Mike said,
heroism.
and I believe, it's all this together, but he is just a figurehead. of all this that's happened around. And you got to admit, this man kept everything together. He was cool about it. He kept
I think
it
he had a lot of
calm
help.
here.
I think he had a
Well,
lot of
naturally,
help.
we're
And in
not-
fact,
we're
none
not
of
arguing.
these
He
situations
definitely
that
had a
we're
lot of
talking
help.
about, Joe, would have happened had it not been for bin Laden.
He who shall not be named.
Right.
Voldemort.
He did it.
Okay, final question. It's time to vote. Rudolph Giuliani, the Time Man of the Year for 2001. The appropriate call, yay or nay? We start with Lee
Nay.
Jackson. You're a nay vote. Harriet Lessey?
Nay.
A nay as well. Joe
Yay.
Vento, a yay. And yours truly is a yay as well. By my mathematics, that means that yay carries the day. This is a controversy that no 15 minutes of fame are going to bring to a logical conclusion. Thank you for joining us.